Tuesday, March 22nd, Board of Selectmen's meeting, followed with rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For announcements this evening, let everybody know that there's going to be a benefit spaghetti dinner for past Fire Chief Elias Smith on April 9th at the Waterboro Central Station from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., and that is $10 per person. And again, that's on April 9th. And it includes spaghetti with meat sauce, salad, bread, and dessert. Okay, first off, a few minutes late this evening, we had an executive session that ran over a bit, but we have Joe Young from the State Planning Office regarding FEMA flood plan maps and MOU. Come on up.
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me down to talk about this. I've talked with Pam a little bit, and so just to try and give you a little bit of background, I brought a couple of illustrations, and this that has all three in it. That's important because the last one is going to show you something that you're going to have to share. I didn't realize how many I was going to have to do.
Do you want me to go make a copy?
I'm sure they won't fight over them. The first illustration that is basically a white paper with the town roads, and it has a tan outline on it. That tan outline represents a floodplain here in Waterboro. And just going through the middle of it is a blue line that indicates a small stream. And the lines that have numbers on them, like 290 and 300 and that sort of thing, are contour lines. And so the stream is supposed to go through the lowest points of that, and the floodplain usually follows a contour. But in this case, you can see where it climbs up a hill on one side and it covers the top of another rise on the other. And if you look at the second illustration that has an aerial photo on it, you'll be able to see the source of that, which to me it looks like it might be just a small farm pond or something. I'm familiar enough with Waterboro to be able to tell exactly. Do any of you recognize that area very well?
Pretty much.
Okay. And the last illustration that this Mr. Gale has shows the properties that would be underneath the floodplain area. And I'm 99.9% confident that none of those properties are actually in a floodplain. The stream is not large enough to generate the kind of flood level that is indicating at all. And this is a key problem in all communities in York County, including Waterboro, where we mapped in the 1970s, early 80s, based on estimates and a lot poorer mapping systems, where we thought the floodplains were going to be. And they haven't been updated since then. What they've done is they've created digital models of the floodplains and put them on aerial photos. However, they haven't improved the methodology for actually creating the lines on the floodplain map. And so the reason I'm here tonight is to speak to you about submitting a memorandum of understanding to FEMA, which asks them to correct these deficiencies in the floodplains. We've been through a process over the last few years where they, in Waterboro and all the inland communities, they lifted up the old floodplains and put them again into a digital format and overlaid them on new base maps, but they do not conform to what the real floodplain is. And this is what the memorandum of understanding would be, a request to them saying, we want you to fix these issues, get new topography, and redelineate the floodplains based on that topography. And it's important that that's done now, because I'm expecting any day now, depending on how the continuing resolutions go in the Congress, once they finally set the budget for FEMA, they're going to issue a task order, and that could happen anytime in the next few weeks. And so it's important to have that memorandum into FEMA so that they will take that into consideration when they issue the task order to do new mapping and to fix a lot of the stuff that they've done in the last few years.
And so from reading the MOU, what I understand is that we would enter into an agreement with FEMA, and our responsibility at that point is to participate in these task force meetings that are going to be held to redo the floodplain maps.
Right. It's essentially what FEMA is going to do the work, obviously, because none of the communities in Maine, or I won't say none, but very few communities in Maine are capable of going out and doing the engineering and all that work. So you're committing to being a participant in terms of reviewing their work, attending meetings. There are basically 4 meetings that are typically scheduled in this process that they call risk map. And that's really the extent of your participation. It's not asking for a monetary contribution. It's not asking for you to do any engineering or anything like that.
And typically, who represents the town at these types of meetings?
It varies from town to town. Some people have their planners do it. Some people have their code enforcement people do it. It could be an engineer. Sometimes it's selectmen themselves. And there's nobody that's excluded from it. It's just, it's whoever you want to designate as a contact person.
And when the final product is done, if the town disagrees with the end product, is there a process that we would have to go through to correct what we might feel it would be incorrect?
There will be an appeals process, and disagreement does not absolve you or take away that right to appeal. However, at that point, it would be incumbent upon the community to show FEMA where they went wrong if they're in review of their engineering work or cartographic work or something like that. It would be up to the community to show this is wrong and this is why it's wrong and this is why it should be done differently.
And if the town opts not to sign the MOU and be involved, what are the repercussions of that?
Not necessarily, well, there's no repercussions per se. It's just that you wouldn't be involved in the risk map process. You may not attend the meetings. This is to get you on record as basically saying these maps are wrong and they need to be fixed. That's really what the MOU is all about. It's not about a punishment if you don't do it. It's about being proactive and having a say in what happens.
Now, I assume these floodplains and the need to be accurate would affect homeowners on if they're required to have flood insurance, right?
Absolutely. That's, that one there, the one that doesn't have the floodplain on it shows, I believe, 3 properties that if they don't have flood insurance now, if there's a mortgage on the property and there's somebody, their bank does a review or an audit of their records, that would be one of the things that would be looked at, and if they were shown in a floodplain, they'd be asked to get flood insurance.
And you said that very likely that this floodplain is not a floodplain.
I'm quite confident that no, it's not.
So those 3 properties really don't need what they're paying for it.
Well, they may or may not be. I don't know the
well,
homeowners.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of
If they have
people
a
out there
mortgage.
that don't have it, and and for years nobody paid much attention in the banking industry. But over the last 10 or a dozen years, there's been a lot more effort to audit bank records, and so they're becoming a lot more proactive in looking at their portfolios and saying, is this supposed to have insurance? And that's where people get caught, is either in a refinancing process or just an internal review of their mortgages.
Any other questions? Patti, did you have any feedback or input in this at all? No? Because I know you had the maps and had an opportunity to kind of look them over.
Basically, what I think the maps that we got in 2009, I believe that's when they were sent to the town, it shows the flood zone as it currently is overlaid onto aerial photography maps. That's what it's the same floodplain on a different type of map.
Tom?
Because the map accuracy is so much better than it was in the past, what Mr. Young is suggesting is really vital to the community in a couple aspects. One, from the mapping aspect, certainly the enforcement aspect. Third, protection of the homeowners aspect. And additionally, important for our relationship with FEMA in the future, particularly in terms of future grants. So the MOU, in my opinion, does have a sense of urgency, and it does help protect the citizens, and it also helps position us for a future relationship with FEMA.
There's just one other thing I'd like to add. I'm showing you an example of where there's properties that are shown in the floodplain and probably are not. There's probably a lot more properties that are in a floodplain but are not mapped as such. And so they could be at risk. You could be permitting properties in floodplains where you shouldn't be because you don't know, because the maps aren't adequate to show that.
No?
So this would, this updated mapping would be useful for rezoning?
It would have a
Question
bearing.
mark to Tom.
It would,
Yeah.
it would have a bearing on certain properties as to how they would be rezoned, or their potential percentage of use of properties.
Anything else? Gordon, do you have something?
No, just, it looks as though that part of this floodplain area is actually that Government Road section.
Into CC,
Yeah,
the
conservation. zone.
forest there, Mass-Bees
Yeah.
Experimental Forest.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming in and explaining that to us. We have it a little further down on our agenda tonight, and I'll make sure that somebody contacts you tomorrow and let you know what we're going to do.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, hearing delegation. Correspondence, we have our update from the code enforcement officer, and we have a memo from the assessor. Reports, town administrator's report.
I did receive the draft copy of the audit. In the process of reviewing it, Julie has reviewed it and has made some notes on it, so I will be getting with her. The memo that the board sent to the planning board to continue looking at the zoning change down around in East Waterboro, they will be setting up a meeting in April, and we'll be inviting the selectmen to attend. And that's the only two things I have right now.
Selectmen's reports. Dennis?
Well, we met Thursday night with the 2020 committee and kind of went through the request that they had for their original request. Kind of broke that down into the specifics of, you know, what the outcome of those monies would generate and whatnot. So, I mean, John and Gordon and I were there, so I think there was a pretty good feel for, there's still a couple of questions, certainly, but it was a pretty good feel for where they're coming from, but I'm sure that'll be discussed at our budget sessions here in the near future. But I think more importantly, one of the glaring deficiencies, I think, that are coming out of this is that this board really needs to take the bull by the horns, I think, and whether we create we'll call it a an executive board or something of committee chairs where we meet on a regular basis so that all the committees understand what their roles are in this grand scheme of running a municipality and who needs help from what board, and so we don't have two different committees doing research on the same items and whatnot. So that's for discussion, I think, at a later time, that we really need to sit down and drive this. But you know, I think some of the sentiment out of the committee is that, you know, the board did get planning board and EDC and the road review together, and we were going to meet again. We've never done that, so I think that the onus is on us. If we want to see this comprehensive plan committee produce a product that is going to be used to guide this municipality in the future, I think this board needs to take an active part in the overseeing of who does what and when, and make sure that we well, I want to say this, we don't oversimplify or point in one direction and say, okay, it's the 2020's job to go put this futuristic plan together. You know, they really need input and help from the other committees, even to the point where I think some folks that sit on those other committees have to participate in this 2020 process. And the other guys can chime in here, but I think that was kind of the gist of where we're coming from.
I would agree that it has to be a broad collaborative effort on the part of a lot of the committees. And they shouldn't be just sitting back saying, oh, that's their job, or that's this one's job. They've got to, sort of everybody's got to pitch in, because there's so many different components to the comprehensive plan that you know, it's incumbent upon them to, you know, participate, because it's what the future's going to look like for the town of Waterboro. And so,
Before we start another committee, we need to define the problem and what it is that committee is going to solve. And so I don't know what needs to happen. Maybe it's one of us or a couple of us to sit down with Tom and get that well defined, so when we decide to put together a member of the planning board or a member of the road review, a selectman and whoever else into this committee, that they have a job that's well defined, that they know what it is that they're doing. And then we'll get some, that can be an effective committee. If it's kind of wide, then I'm not sure it's going to end up doing anything.
I did go to the town meeting that Governor LePage had on Friday evening at Thornton Academy. He had several talking points. It was, when you went in, if you had a question, then you fill out the question and submit a piece of paper, and then the staff picked which questions would be asked during the event, and it was an hour and a half. Some of the talking points, education, they talked towards going more with charter schools, and then also allowing, and there's going to be a big push for this coming up in the next year, allowing students to go to whichever school they choose to go to. So if a Waterboro student wants to go to, say, Thornton Academy, the state is going to have an open concept of schooling, and the money that is generated from tax dollars in the community will follow that student to whatever community they choose to go to school in. Not sure how they're going to work that one out, but
Did they comment about if a school, which is private, says, no, we don't want students?
no. It was very general. They were trying to get through a lot in an hour and a half, so they pretty much had their talking points, and they allowed 10 minutes for roughly each. And with Governor LePage were several of the commissioners, so it wasn't just Governor LePage speaking, it was the commissioners as well. We talked about due including private schools into that mix, and they were talking about parochial schools also being eligible for state funds. There were several teachers there, and a lot of the teachers had questions about the current pension. Talked about healthcare. He said the Dare Go program will be disbanded sooner rather than later. Talked about welfare reform, and right now they're looking at taking the Department of Health and Human Services and splitting it into two agencies, one being the Department of Health and one being the Department of Human Services, and each being very specialized in what their purpose is going to be. And he's also very much looking at gearing with welfare reform, one of the components being that if you're unemployed, you're actively seeking work, and if you can't find work in order to be eligible for your check every month, you have to do so many hours of volunteer service every week. So if you're unable to find employment, then it's going to be expected that you're going to be volunteering. Talked about the budget and economic development. They very much want to bring more businesses into Maine. Talked a little bit about the restructuring of some of the current bills and how looking to loosen up some of the standards so that we're a little bit more open to business. Also talked about the budget. One of the topics was, here he is, wanting teachers to give up part of their salary and pension, and there was talk about why isn't he doing the same, and he explained that he can't propose changes to his salary or his contributions. It has to be done by the legislation. And also talked about, I actually had an opportunity to ask a question, and my question was geared towards the state cutting services at the state level, which then trickle down to the municipalities having to pick up the funding, unfunded mandates. And what he told me was, I pledge to veto any unfunded mandates that cross my desk. So we'll see. I wrote that one down, the date and the time. So it was an interesting evening. I know that some of it was quite comical, and I'm glad that I went. So it was a good event. All right, moving on.
A note on that, what I read and some comments that I've heard, that was pretty well orchestrated as to, so that they really controlled the content of that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, you had to write your question when you went in, and they picked which questions got asked. Moving on, committee reports, Finance Committee, Tina.
Hey there. We have been meeting twice a month for the last 2.5 months, going over the proposed budget. We have brought several questions to Nancy. Diane has emailed her with several questions. Some, we got a response, didn't really answer it. We got a response, but it didn't necessarily answer the question. But I did hear Nancy say that she got the preliminary audit from the auditors. And what are we looking at for a time frame to finally get these numbers into, I guess, officially close 2010?
I hope within a couple of weeks. I haven't gone with Julie yet. She's made some notes because there's some of the figures she doesn't agree with. So I would, once the selectmen look at it and they give their approval, I would think within a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks.
Looking at the last expense revenues reports that I received for 2010, they're dated June 29th. I don't know what day it actually went through, but the report was dated June 29th. We were in the hole almost $200,000.
It's covered in the report. It has been balanced out.
Because, I mean, we've got several departments that under-collected revenues and overspent expenditures. I mean, the library was almost 32,000 in the hole.
But that doesn't include the money for the $21,000 for the roof that was down there either. That wasn't applied towards that.
Was that in the CIP? It should be.
It was, the funds was, at that point, it was taken out of their account, but the $21,000 wasn't added to the account.
Because
So it
even
looks
if
like it was overdrawn.
because the CIP was overdrawn too. Parks and Rec was over $45,000 in the red. EMS was $168,000 in the red. You know, this is based on anticipated revenues, and when we don't collect the revenues and we overspend the budget, that money's gotta come from somewhere.
I think, I think we need to look at where the auditor has us, because as Nancy suggests, there's some accounting issues that there's money that were either not budgeted in the spreadsheet, okay, that got carried forward. That's why we go through this audit process. So rather than talking about what a June 29th unofficial revenue and expenditure report says, I think we ought to settle down and look at what the audit says, and then I think we can have that kind of conversation.
Well, these numbers were based on the town report for
Right, but again,
anticipated expenditure, or
those
approved expenditures.
understand, but if there's not money like the rescue billing account that isn't journaled into those accounts, you're not gonna see that. In the general revenue account, all you see is a debit of the tax commitment. You don't see where the money was collected because the money's collected in a general ledger, right? So those aren't reconciled until we get to the final end of this thing.
So when would the finance committee be able to review the auditor's numbers? Because I'm looking at a $200,000 deficit.
We haven't even looked at the audit yet, Tina. We just got it. I mean, we literally got it tonight.
So
But we haven't had the opportunity to
is
look
this
it over
something
yet
that will be
either.
able to be reviewed before town meeting?
Well,
Absolutely.
yeah. If we're hoping to have it done within the next couple of
Within the
weeks,
next
I would
few-
say
alright.
that the finance committee will have it within the next couple of weeks.
All right, I hope so, because that'd be something I'm very interested in looking at. The special town meeting that we're going to be having, when will the finance committee receive the written articles on that to make a recommendation?
We're going to discuss them this evening.
That will be discussed, and then
It's
how
on the
many,
agenda tonight.
are you going to be giving us a draft of the written
Yes.
articles?
Yes,
And where the money's coming from?
yes.
And how many articles are we looking at?
4,
Is it just Parks and Rec?
and the first one,
No,
excuse me,
no.
5. No, there's a
5.
couple of, if you want to stick around for the meeting, we're going to be discussing it.
Okay, so there's 5.
Well,
And the first one being to elect the moderator, so.
That's the most tenuous one.
Yeah, right. And then the CIP expenses for 2011, for this fiscal year, were overspent $37,000. So I was wondering where we are on keeping track of that.
That's going to be part of a road project that we had to do out on Hemlock Oak, the flooding issue that we were having out in that area, but we also have some money that, from roads, that might help offset some of that.
All right. That's all I have.
Okay.
I'm good. We
Any
are- we've got-
questions, Tina?
We got everybody that we need for the committee. We've got 5 people, so it's wonderful. We've been having great meetings.
I just, I gotta say, there's a bit of a flaw, I mean, in the plan as far as the finance committee writing questions to Nancy. I mean, it gets it on paper. So we have here's a question, it gets it on paper, you get a response, so you get the timeliness of the nature. However, it's one-way communication. And you've got some questions that may be fairly complicated to answer, and there can be a miscommunication just in writing. So ideally, here, there'd be something in writing saying, here's the finance committee has gone over these accounts and has the questions in the following area. But then it really probably is going to require some one-on-one communication, so that follow-up questions, I didn't get that, I didn't understand that, what did you say here, you can get a follow-up questions. Otherwise, what you got is you got a written response, and that doesn't say anything, that didn't answer the question. Well, because maybe the question was written in such a sense, or it was read in such a way that the two people, the finance committee and the representative of the finance committee and Nancy or whoever's answering the question here are just don't have that.
You wrote up that original step
Yeah,
guide.
the original thing has been followed, but I think the problem now is, and it's being answered, the questions they come out of the finance committee, they come to Nancy, Nancy answers the question, but it may come back to the finance committee the next meeting, and I don't understand this, or it wasn't answered. Well, it was a complicated enough question, or the answer was complicated enough that it didn't lend itself to a written response. It really kind of required a verbal response.
So do you want to tweak that original document that you created? And
I don't think it needs any more document. I think it just needs, I think that kind of sets up the process, but I think you can process it to depth. The thing is that you need some one-on-one communication. And I'm not exactly sure how that's done, whether a finance committee member comes in and has, after a meeting and sits down, gets an appointment with Nancy, sits down with Nancy and has a chance to ask those questions and take notes, or, yeah, I think that may be the next step.
does that work for you?
Well, it depends on who's available. Diane's been wonderful asking questions of Nancy, and like I said, 99% of the time we're getting a response, but not necessarily an answer. So, like John said, there is a flaw.
Well,
But we were advised to go directly through Nancy.
so I would guess if there's a question, if you need to come in and sit with Nancy, or somebody needs to sit with Nancy.
Does that, Nancy, you're on the other end of this too, so, and you may get a question, write out a response, and they don't think it answered the question, but if they're there, they can say, geez, I don't think I got the answer, and they can ask it again and rephrase it. You can, but I think, I sitting at the finance committee meeting as they're coming up with these questions, I can't answer them. And some of them I say, okay, this is what we did as a board of selectmen, but a lot of them I can't answer either.
Now, the finance committee does review the expense revenue reports that we get every other week. I think it's every other week, close to it anyway. We do review them, and we do bring to the board's attention when things are being overexpended. And unfortunately, I don't know any politically correct way to say it, but we will bring in over expenditures to your attention for months, and it's not until this budget is overspent that something's finally getting done about it. And now we got to go back to the taxpayers and say, we need more money to fund Parks and Rec. And where we, the board, could have reduced the spending in plenty of time to not warrant a special town meeting asking for more money. This is something that had been ongoing for months. And
I
we've got
would happily debate that article, that comment, if
I
you'd
have
let
the
me,
floor right now,
since
so
it's actually
thank you.
not
Well, I'm the
true.
chair, so
And
I'll
it's
say what's
inaccurate.
going to happen, so we're
Since
not
it's
going to go down
true,
that
it's
road
inaccurate.
right
Thank
now,
you.
Mike.
Why don't we have the finance committee ask questions directly of the department heads?
Because it goes through the town administrator, and we're not going to have that conversation right now.
Okay.
Anything else, Tina?
That'll do.
Okay, thanks. Next up is the treasurer. Patty, did you need something else tonight? We just needed you for the floodplain thing.
Okay, if you don't need me for the proposal thing, I'm all set.
I
That works for me?
think we're going to get there, so if we need you, we know you're not too far away.
Thank you.
We'll be a short one. No, we're short too.
go to them. On your front page, the bright yellow tells you on the front exactly what you have. I do have it on the CD if you want anything overhead, but I talked to David, and the figures would be quite minute, and so we'll go from that. I've made a printout as of today. You don't have that report. You'll get it Thursday like you have been. You and the Finance Committee are getting them weekly. And as of today, in your revenues, taking out your tax commitment and your supplemental and the abatements for the bottom line, as of right now, we have collected 81.18952% collected. That leaves 372,600 and change to be collected in the last quarter. And I'd like to make a recommendation. 2 years ago, when I think, Dennis, you were the chair, we did a journal entry to get rid of the tax committal and the supplemental, and I'm asking if it could be done again, and this will show a better reality of what you're trying to collect, since your taxes are shown in your GL accounts. And the GL, the taxes are right in line. We're about 50% collected, and April 6th is your next due date for taxes. And they're coming in good right now, so we're ahead of the game. You only have 1, 2, 3, 4 departments, 5 departments actually, but you can't count Old Home Days, 4 departments that are running behind 50% or 75%. Even the municipal government, we've only got 18% left to collect in the last quarter. On your revenues report that you have there, but on the current one as of today, we have 14 weeks left of expenditures till year end. Plus, if you wish, you have your accruals to go for, I believe it's another 30 days, Nancy? Is that right, usually? On top of that. And as of right now, you're 65% expended, and you have several accounts that have several lines in the red. I realize we're not line item budgeting, but that should be looked at so that it doesn't sneak up and get us again. Just on that. And in your packet, if I may, the first folder, your lavender, is from July 2009 to February of 2010. In comparison, the hot pink one is the same period for this year's budget.
And those are the expenditure reports?
There is the expenditure, the revenue, and the GL summary are all there, Dennis.
Okay.
They're in expense first, revenue, and then your GL in each packet.
All right, but they're,
They're all right there.
Yep.
Okay? Then in your light blue is from July to March for 2010, and then the royal blue is was through March 17th. Reminding you folks that there's 2 more weeks of warrants that aren't included there, as well as 2 weeks of payroll before the month-end reports. If I can go to your exhibits that are at the back end of your report, there's a comparison of your revenues and expenditures for both years, and it's dated the dates that they encumber. First your revenues and then your expenses. I had to, as I said, go with February because we don't have March's figures. And when you come to the Marches, there's still 2 more weeks to be posted before the month end. The Exhibit B is your comparison by department of your revenues. Going down through, if it's red, it means they are above what the budget stated. And so that's by each department. Public Works, theirs for this year, that 20,000 is from FEMA money for prior year's projects that we've received. And you'll see that on your current revenue reports pointed out.
So just so I get it straight, the red is not a deficit in this.
basically, right, the Dennis has answered it for you.
So what?
Just the delta from the two different years.
Okay.
Your basic, if you know, this is just a conglomerate of what you have in each one of your packets.
So as an example, I guess, if you will, EMS, right?
Right,
Revenues on Exhibit B.
right?
Um,
At that time,
Budgeted was 404, the balance uncollected
right?
is 235.
And the percent to still be collected in the last quarter and a month. And I believe you folks still have the year-end packet that I gave you. I couldn't see killing any more trees than what we have. And figures, until I receive otherwise, or other figures that, are the end of the year figures, but I believe that there's different ones, and I haven't had a chance to sit with Nancy because she just downloaded it from the audit report.
Yep. So you
And,
two will get together and talk about that.
but your collections and your revenues are looking real good for your departments. As I said, there's, the ones that basically are behind are because of they're related to the public, like your code enforcement, your planning board, and your zoning board. And they can't make something happen that isn't happening in the public. But as I stated in opening, to get a more proper, and so that the public could see a better aspect of it, in 2009, we debited the tax commitment line and credited in the GL, the undesignated, and that's how we were asked to do it. And I know Dennis was instrumental in, he had quite a conversation with Trio on that subject. Am I right, sir?
Yep. Well, I mean, you got a revenue expenditure report that doesn't show
Doesn't show it because it's in the
80% of
GL.
the revenue coming into the municipality.
Right, because it's in the...
Oh, by the way, that's in the GL.
But as I said, on your bottom line for your budget from your revenue account, subtracting out those 3 items from it, leaves under $375,000 to collect. And that's not even showing the taxes, so you're doing, I think, very good.
Good.
At this moment. And if there's anything else, and I'll wait your wishes on if you want to make that journal entry. And
I like the hot pink color, but other than that, I'm fine.
well, I got complained about the red color last time, so I tried to be a little bit better, different. But if you keep your bright yellow page, that will tell you exactly what you're looking at. Okay?
Any questions, Julie? All right, thanks, Julie.
Thank you very much. Folks, have a nice evening.
All right.
I like the hot pink.
Under new business, I need a motion to add the abatement.
Abatement request.
Yep.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? So we'll add that as number 3 under new business. All right. Next, under new business, we have discuss vote to sign waiver form partial payment. In our packet, we have a proposal on making partial payments on a parcel of property. And the request is to make a payment of $100 per month due on the 30th of each month until paid in full. And the total amount due is $1522.82. So what is the pleasure of the board?
Is this something that we've historically done in the past?
Made these kind of arrangements? Yeah.
I'd move we accept the payment schedule.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the waiver partial payments form. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? All right. Next, discuss vote FEMA proposal. We had Mr. Young that came in earlier this evening to talk to us about this. We have the sample MOU in last week's packet. What's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
Still want to have any input, Pam?
Joe actually said he could email me a less complicated MOU as well. And I said, we would love to have that, and then I can share it with Pam, and she can mail it to all of you. And he said he'd do it tomorrow.
Okay.
Is that going to include the language changes so that it reflects Waterboro rather than the other towns?
Yeah, and all that. I mean, that was a sample one that we gave you,
Yeah.
but it's awfully complicated, more toward coastal, where this one could be a lot less complicated.
So we have a motion to enter an agreement with FEMA. We have a second. Any discussion?
Well, do we want to withdraw the motion and wait for this new one?
No?
Yeah, that would seem, I don't want to, I'm going to vote down if I'm voting on something that I haven't even seen yet. I'd rather wait
And do it next
to
week.
review that
He knows
document.
it's,
How about if we amend the motion to agree to enter into an MOU, and we'll sign the actual MOU next week after we agree, after we see it?
It's his motion.
Just so that they know that we are interested in signing an MOU with them, we just need a cleaner copy.
that it's pending.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's clean, though. I don't know. I mean,
Well, you can do it again next week if you want to table it till next week.
Is he gonna be okay with us putting it off another week?
Yes, he will be.
I withdraw my motion.
Okay. Withdraw the second?
I'll withdraw the second.
All right, so do we want to table this till next week when we have an actual MOU copy to sign?
That has to be in the form of a motion or?
No.
Okay.
Table it.
Just be on this week's agenda.
Could I ask one more question on that?
Sure.
Are you going to delegate Tom and Patti to sort of be the focal points of that, so on a go-forward basis, we really know who's getting all the information, so that nobody thinks it's somebody else, just to make it clean?
No, it should be in the MOU,
Yeah.
of who the contact
You
is.
want it in the, that works for me, but who do you want in it? Let me say that then.
I feel Tom's got enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Things on his
if
plate.
anything, it's Patti and you relative to, you know,
I don't want to dictate, so.
Patti really kind of owns it
Right.
from that perspective, but I think your
But
input
just-
on it from an EMS perspective, I mean, an EMA perspective is,
It would be good for me down the road in mitigation, that's all, I just want
but I think
mitigation.
she's the
money.
prime contact.
Yep.
But
I'd be in
just to put
agreement
that in,
with
just to
Yep.
make it clean.
Yep.
Okay, with Patti being the primary.
Patti and Pam.
All right. Next, under, need to vote on the abatement request. As recommended during the executive session.
I would move that we deny the abatement and request and work out a payment schedule.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All right. Moving on to old business. As a tickler, we have the discuss vacancy on Charter Commission. We talked about this a few weeks ago, and the selectmen were going to start talking to some folks that we know, to see if anybody is interested in getting on the Charter Commission. We have a vacancy of a member that was appointed by the board that needs to be filled. And I know I've talked to a couple of people and haven't had anyone that has expressed interest. Has anybody else?
spoken to someone too, but there was no interest.
I think, I don't even know where I got this information from, somebody, but that the selectmen can also sit in
Yes.
and fill that,
One elected official can sit in on the board.
if nobody steps forth or whatever.
Well, even if somebody would step
Yeah.
forth, it was our option to, if we wanted to appoint somebody from the board or not.
I think part of the, at least the conversations I've had with a couple of people that I thought might be interested, that this commission has not let any grass grow under their feet, so to speak. They've moved fairly quickly through this process, and I think they're now down to, compiling recommendations and whatnot. So it's almost like somebody now would come in a little bit after the fact, but, I don't think that should stop us from trying to get somebody to fill this, but they have moved pretty quickly with their meetings and inputs and whatnot, so.
Well, we
I
have
think we
to,
still need to poke at it, but.
we have to fill the vacancy, so that's our problem.
Was there a deadline, 30 days or something?
The state statute says immediately.
But that's an unfunded mandate, so.
Yeah, Governor will have to veto it.
I guess you could have 5 lawyers in a room and ask them to debate, what immediately is, and you get 5 different opinions over 5 different months, so. I would say as soon as practical. Us
So-
finding somebody would be the practical thing
Yeah.
first.
So do we want to put this off for a couple more weeks?
I'd say if we can't find somebody in the next couple of weeks, then I think we'll draw straws and whatever. One of us, really, it's gonna be to the point where we need to, it's not like, there's 5 elected, and there were 3 appointed, down to 2 appointed. So it's not as if they don't have a very viable committee, and they are, like I said, moving pretty quickly, so.
All right, so we'll beat the bushes until April 5th.
Tammy, could we move number 4 up, please, if it's not too much trouble?
The other 2 things are going to take us about 5 minutes.
Okay, all right.
Assess goals. John, did you
Yeah,
want to go over this, or?
I think that's gonna take a little bit more time than probably we're ready to do right now, so I'd put it off again for another, maybe another week.
Table it to, we'd be looking at April 5th.
Yeah, I think what we need to do is come in and all of us look at those and be ready to come up with some,
Okay.
maybe write some stuff down and come in ready to spend 15, 20 minutes at it anyway,
Okay.
maybe half hour.
Everybody agreeable to that? Okay, request to purchase town lot on Courtney Lane by Abutter. Pam did talk to Jerry about the parcel, and Jerry did send a letter to us that the above parcel has been owned by the town since 1992. Prior to that, it was assessed to unknown and taxed for 4 years, with the last known owner having been Joseph Benoit, heirs of, yet there was no deed found in the York County Registry. The lot has 100 feet frontage on Courtney Lane, has an old foundation, and the value of the vacant lot is $46,700, and it appears consistent with other rare vacant lots in the area. If the town agrees to sell this particular lot with a building restriction, the value of the lot will be reduced by 40%, producing a value of $23,300, which would be above what was offered. To date, there are 4 years of outstanding taxes due with interest in the amount of $2,813.75. I know Dennis said maybe there was something with the Charter Commission and that parcel, and I know Pam was doing some research on that,
Conservation.
conservation, and I know she was doing some research on that, but I don't know what she found. So, what would the board like to do with this?
I like to put it off until we find more info.
What info were you looking for?
Well, I thought we were looking at the
If
conservation.
it's the conservation stuff?
I reviewed some deeds last week with Pam, because there's no specific deed for that particular piece of property, but I thought by examining the deed of the abutters, that we may find a reference to those particular boundary lines in those other deeds, that we could come up with an owner. But it's going to be a little more in-depth than I was able to do that day. So,
So we'll have Pam do some more research and so we can come up with that. I mean, certainly we don't want to sell a lot that we find out we don't have a deed on. All right. Next, discuss vote warrant for special town meeting. Nancy was able to provide us tonight with a warrant. Nancy, you want to go through this for us?
No, we get right to the big one. The very first one is Parks and Rec. Mike and I have been going around and going around with this one. And I guess you feel that this is going to be...
I'll take the fifth.
Well, you was looking at, we came up with what, $20,000 a month for expenses, correct?
Well, when you average out a year of spending, we're at year-to-date, according to what Julie put out today, at about $170,000. If you base that out and say we're through with March, that leaves 3 months of spending left. So if you divide 170 into 9, it's a shade under 20. It's more like 18.5. However, June is a month where we take in our most revenues and spend the least, because it's the month where we collect all of our funding for our summer programs, which generally totals, last year it totaled $51,000, and last year was one of our weaker years because we were just coming out of a depression, and certainly that's part of the reason why we're here today, having to go back to the taxpayers for this. But before we get to the article, why don't we do a little bit of background research and discussion to see how we got here and to prevent us from ever getting here again. I brought a copy of the annual town warrant that we discussed in June. And if you review the tape, you will clearly hear me saying over and over again that the numbers do not add up. And they do not add up. On page 7 is the Parks and Rec article. It's actually a piece of 7 and 8, but it begins on 7 and it asks to appropriate $46,729 from taxation. You don't get? Oh, by the way, there is an art show taking place from 7 to 8 o'clock next door. Let me interrupt. There's an art show taking place. Kids have worked very, very hard on a variety of art projects this session. Go take a walk through if you get a chance to do that. If you're watching at home, come on down and check that out. So we asked the taxpayers for $46,700. If you look at the amount requested column on the left of page 8, right up top, you see a grand total of $167,729. On the second to last line item, there is program expense for $88,000. Let's just say in a hypothetical world that we didn't have any recreation programs at all. We don't have any. Mike just manages the maintenance piece of the municipality. So I'm going to theoretically back that 88 out. We'll round off the 167 to 168. That's going to leave us a balance of $80,000. Director's salary, park attendant salary, grounds maintenance for all the facilities that we're responsible for maintaining, fertilizing, pest control, etc., retirement, mileage, training, office supplies, electricity, telephone, equipment and maintenance, 0, other equipment, gasoline and diesel fuel, advertising, catalog, and of course, the ever-important toilets. That totals $80,000. But what did we do? We asked the taxpayers for $46,000. So we placed a $34,000 burden on recreation. That's a significant burden for a town of 2,300 full-time homes. We'll call it 3,000 homes, although Jerry seems to think that about 800 of them are seasonal. So we placed the $34,000 burden on recreation. Up until 5 years ago, we actually put $7,500 towards recreation in part of our line item thing. So in a span of 5 years, we've not only eliminated the 75, but we've come up with the crazy idea that rec can profit $34,000 or $41,500 from just 5 years ago.
Do you have your little whiteboard that you always bring that shows
It's
all the
next-
revenues
I do.
and
It's
whatnot?
it's
Because, you know, Mike, you're going down this road, and as I seem to recall,
Yeah,
you said that you were gonna have all these revenues coming in. And that's why we opted to go with the budget that we
well,
did.
I'll get to that.
Because,
Well, I'll get to that in 1 second.
I'm
If
not,
you'll-
I'm not sure if this is leading us into the article before us, but.
Well, it is. I want to give us a little, I want to give a little history to this, John, because I am not willing to write articles for the town of Waterboro anymore that don't ask for the full appropriated amount necessary to handle the maintenance piece of this job. Because the burden upon recreation being $35,000 is absurd. It's unacceptable. It cannot work. Now, let me back up 1 second.
Mike,
We're
I
at
wanna correct you on one-
$105,000 in
I want to correct
revenues.
you one thing.
Go ahead.
You don't write the articles.
I know I don't, and that's why we're here doing this right now, thank you. That's right. When I submit a budget, I get emails back from finance committee members and selectmen and other people saying, we need you to take 20% off of that, we want you to do the same job. So if you want Parks and Rec to balance out at the end of the year, forget that recreation can make you any money, because that might be the way it has to go if we're forced to predict what's gonna happen 18 months down the road. Julie just handed us something that said we've taken in $103,000 year to date. Is that about where we're at?
Revenues,
Yeah.
99.
99,727, and you've
The
spent.
report I saw today had 102 on it, Nancy.
That's
So-
I got
so,
101,263.75.
We'll call it 100. We'll call it 100. Going forward, what Nancy and I have assumed, and believed to be so, will be the fact that we're going to take in an additional $50,000 in the remaining 3 months of the year. So we had a couple of things go wrong. I predicted that we'd take in 120. We're going to take in 150. But even with that, the $34,000 burden that was placed on Parks and Rec was simply too great to make up. So we're here asking to take some money from the surplus to allow us to go up above the 168, which was our threshold. But to me, the good news is the fact that we're going to exceed our $121,000 department revenue by close to $30,000. So what article that Nancy and I came up with essentially is asking for up to $20,000 in surplus. So if we agree that we place the $34,000 burden on rec this year to balance every expense that the department incurs, retirement, fuel, grass cutting, fertile, everything that we just discussed, recreation, in fact, was only able to take about 40% of that bite out of the deal. Now, without recreation, clearly, we have an additional spending issue because recreation is subsidizing this department, and it's doing it fairly well. Now, when we assumed that we were going to start this new program last year, estimations were made. I didn't expect that we would need and have a full house after just 8 weeks of this gig. And the 42-week school year essentially means that for 42 weeks, our spending was much higher than I thought it would have to be. Nicely, our revenues are much higher than they are supposed to be as well. So, to me, recreation is doing exactly what we needed to do. I don't think it's appropriate to have it subsidizing maintenance because the fire department doesn't have their rescue fees subsidizing stuff. They get an account to keep it in, and they discuss where it should be spent appropriately. And that's how it used to be 6 or 8 years ago in this department, to the point where we were able to take additional money that we had rolled over and build a new basketball court at Friendship Park, and build a soccer field at Friendship Park, and build a new well at Friendship Park, all with recreation dollars. So look at the big picture. As far as I'm concerned, the future's pretty bright. Now, as far as the article goes, pretty confusing. I'm glad Nancy knows how to do this because we looked at each other a lot and talked a lot.
And you gave me a headache.
Yeah, well, what we did is we took the page from recreation and looked at how much retirement money still needs to be spent, how much insurance money still needs to be spent, where are we with fuel and electricity. And if you look at the fuel and electricity piece, we're already over by $200. I don't really know how that happens next door, but it has. And the incidental number at $3,550 down the bottom is one of those accounts that get paid at an odd time of the year. So if you chopped out the incidentals and backed out the additional fuel costs where we're already over budget in just 8 months, really, this might chop out to only a $10,000 need out of surplus, which would really mean that recreation has provided $24,000 of subsidy for maintenance. We spoke the other day about that, Gordon. I think that you left that meeting, that discussion, with some type of understanding of what's being asked of recreation.
Yeah, I know, we spent an hour and a half, and
Do you
I
have a
don't know,
headache too?
Huh?
Do you have a headache too?
No, there was confusing moments, and I think part of it is the way that the accounting practices are, and the budgeting format that's used for Parks and Recreation. I think at some point, we're gonna have to completely fund Parks and Recreation budget-wise, and then the monies that come in during the course of the year will take care of that. We seem to be almost going backwards to pay forward.
It's a
And
difficult thing to prep a budget in November. We start the budget process in December, and I have to make an assumption of what's going to come in June. And additionally, in June, that money disappears because we haven't been carrying it forward. So we've got kind of a double whammy there. You got guesswork, it'll roll around back to the next year. But after that first year of doing that, we went into a terrible economy. We went from $111,000 in revenues in '08 down to $84 in '09. And there was nothing to lead us to believe that that would ever change. That chart I drew for you showed the revenues going like that, Tammy, that you mentioned. And we had no reason to believe that we weren't going to be, it had actually leveled because we said, we can't do any more. We're stressed out, we've got no room, we can't do any more. And then all of a sudden we predicted 110 and we went down to 84. 1 year later, we're back to 140, 150. So you see the bumps in the road that occasionally take place in this process, and the timing that you mentioned, Gordon, you're right. In years when you don't know what's going to happen with the cost of fuel, cost of electricity, and other incidentals, you can get yourself into a $6,000 to $12,000 SNP.
What this article really is going to do is Parks and Rec had permission from the townspeople to spend $121,000 out of their revenue. They've added new programs. They've had expenses. What this article is going to do is give them permission to utilize the other $48,100 in the revenues and up to
Excuse me.
$20,000 out of surplus to cover their expenses through June 30th.
So that's 60,000?
68.
68-1.
So what you just said, Nancy, is the money was appropriated on the Townhouse 4
Correct.
to operate Parks and Rec. And
And July,
then the program expanded. And there went the cost have gone up.
and also too, July 1st, they're in the hole. They're starting out in the hole.
I know that.
And you
Right.
hope what they spent from July through end of August on their summer rec programs, they will make up when they take in their revenues beginning April, May, and June of the following year.
Right, we're starting registration for our summer programs in a week or two.
Well, I guess I need to go back to what I was saying. X number of dollars was raised for Parks and Rec. That's what they're operating on for the ensuing year, this fiscal year. And then the program expanded, thus the cost expanded. That is not keeping within what was raised or voted on at town meeting.
Right, and that's what this article will take care of.
So the thing is,
If the article is not approved, Parks and Rec's done for the rest of the year.
Well, I mean, if I'm operating my budget at my house, I mean, I have to live within what I know is coming in.
Or what you think is coming in. What you hope is coming in.
I hope that 120 would come in, 150's coming in.
Well,
When
you
more,
So why are we behind the eight ball then, Mike?
well, because the additional revenues require additional expenses. We're taking in $2,000 a week over there for the 40 weeks of the school year. The first 10 weeks of that program didn't necessarily take in $2,000. There was a limited window there in those first 10 weeks of the school year. We were having this program where we weren't maxed out on student capacity. We have been for the last 20 weeks or so. So you've got a 40-week program that we've committed ourselves to. The surplus takes place over the last 15 weeks of the program where we've maxed it out, we're taking in $2,000 a week, hence our revenues will be well above 120, and our expenses as a result of that are going to have to necessarily be above 168.
Well, I don't understand if you're taking in 2,000 a week and you have X number of dollars of expenses, how that changes when you get down to June from the program. You
Well,
said you took in X number of dollars, 2,000.
well, we were taking in $800 the first week, 2 weeks, then 1,000, then we had 10 kids, then we
Okay,
had
but
14
why
kids.
are your expenses so great if you have less kids?
Well, because you have to have 2 people minimum on duty, if not 3, once you get above 10 kids. But I can still have 3 people on duty with 20 kids. So those extra kid 15 through 20 at $70 a week nets me $300 in surplus. So now you span that out over the course of 10 weeks of the program, and it suddenly made us $3,000. I think if we simply go back to the fact that you've placed a $40,000 burden on recreation, and we're not $40,000
Yes,
short.
You knew that going into your budget, Mike.
No, I did not, David. I
You-
absolutely did not. I wrote this budget up in November of last year. I stood up on the townhouse floor and I go, these numbers are flawed, this'll never work. Look at the tape. It's flawed, I don't know how you do this, it's meatball budgeting.
Okay, so.
The only thing we
so
can do
whether
this
you-
year-
Whether you stood up on the townhouse floor or not, I guess, to my point, is irrelevant. The day after town meeting, you had $167,000 to spend.
Yeah.
Period.
Right?
You spent that in 9 months,
I did.
okay?
You also sat here and approved the program that I said I was gonna start.
Right, and we approved a program not to put you in the hole because you sold the program as a plus program, okay?
Correct, it's a
So-
new business
so
that
let's
takes
just-
time to start up.
Let me just run the numbers, okay?
I know the
Because-
numbers, Dennis.
All right, you're on a run rate of $141,000 spent, okay? If you
What do
take
mean?
what
We're already
you...
at 170
No,
spent.
I'm sorry. $241,000 in spent.
Sounds high,
Okay.
but maybe.
Well, that's a run rate. If I take what you're running, okay, and say that's 12 months at that rate,
Yeah.
it's $241,000. You're asking with an additional 60 here to spend 224.
68 plus 60 would be 228.
Okay,
Nancy
well,
and I
224, 2 is what this number, 48 and 20, okay?
is 68 plus 167.
So ultimately,
Right.
you're $56,000 over the spend.
If the final number ends up being 68 plus 167, that'd be a total of 235.
But you're not, you're 171 already.
Okay.
You're
Okay.
171 and 10, and 8.5.
I'm 171 because the numbers that I'm looking at are from March 9th, the last
Okay.
time we met.
But you're 171. In the last month since we've met, all right, you've only spent $10,000. So I'm not sure why we're now at a $15,000 run rate, because I think you can get, if you manage this thing, I think you can do it for less than 15 a month. That's my
It depends when the bills come in.
layman's
I mean,
perspective, okay? In the last month, since we last met, you've spent $10,000. You brought in $10,000 in revenue,
Okay.
okay? So the problem hasn't gotten any worse in the last month, all right? So I guess what I'm looking for is, it shouldn't get any worse in the next 3.5 months if we manage the expenses to comply, to go along with the revenues. If you go by your run rate revenues, you're only gonna collect 140. You're saying that you're gonna collect 151 or something, right?
Yeah, I'm assuming
So there's gotta be a high end on the tail end here, and I understand you've got summer camps that are gonna come in the last couple of months. But the fact of the matter is whether or not the budget was gonna work at town meeting or not, there was a vote of the people that said, this is what you have to spend, all right? So we have to manage what we have to spend. And in this case, we didn't do that, okay? We just said, these are the programs we're running, you know, giddy up, let's go, Katie by the door, right?
It was difficult, even on June 15th, to assume what was going to take place on the first week of September with regard to our after-school program. I'm on the townhouse floor. No one knows it's happening except for us at this meeting. I asked you for approval. Go ahead and start your program. It's June. We walk into September. We run a couple ads. 6 kids show up. I got staff. It took 10 or 12 weeks to break even, 13 or 14 to start turning $50, $100 a week profit. And now on week 28, we see the light at the end of the tunnel. Did I manage it in the best possible way? No, but I'm willing to give myself the benefit of the doubt for having to make assumptions so far in advance.
And I don't have a problem with that, Mike. I think we're all going based on the expectation of what you're gonna bring in. But once the line is drawn in the sand, we need to manage to the line. And I will be perfectly honest with you. There's more people culpable in this than just you, all right?
I'll take
Why
the
did-
heat. I don't have a
why
problem
did-
with
Why
it.
did we get to a point 9 months into the year where we've spent the entire budget, all right?
Well,
I'll take my share of that just like everybody else should, all right? But the fact of the matter is that we've got a program and whatnot, but we need to, and so I'm a bit shocked that we're gonna throw another $68,000 at this, all right? When we know clearly that we need to manage the revenues and the expenditures, more so on the expenditure side, between now and June 30th. I don't see by spending $68,000 on it, we're gonna manage anything other than we're just gonna do what we've been doing for the last 8.5
well,
months.
I would respectfully disagree. We're assuming that the department will take in $50,000. And every number that we've looked at, right off this sheet, this is right off the control right here, that shows what's left to be spent for the year. Insurance, $2,200. Retirement, $392. Mileage, $519. These costs are built into our town meeting right here in June.
Yep.
Built into it. What isn't built into it is the program, well, we built in an $88,000 program
And you-
expense.
and you
That's the big boy right
And you,
there.
and you spent
And we're at
110.
110, correct. The additional $22,000 is directly related to what's taken place in Funergy. It really isn't, because we're already over budget on electricity, we're already over budget on telephone, we're already over budget on gasoline, we're already over budget on a few other minor items, and the additional $4,000 incidental item, plus the repairs over there. It's, now, I could nitpick us out $5,000 and stuff that really is the municipal buildings budget, but I've spoken enough, I think, right now. How do we go forward, yeah, how do we go forward without, we can't go forward unless we put in a special town meeting article.
John?
When we came up with the Funergy program, we all, I believe, overlooked the fact that by adding that program, we're going to go over the $167,729 the taxpayers allowed us to spend in recreation. So we overlooked that. And I think we were looking at that as a positive program. And Mike, you said this is going to pay for itself, and this is a need, and it's going to make money. The question that I have, and the most, and I can say, okay, I've got to take some responsibility for okaying that program and not being directly aware, in doing so, that I'm basically shooting the budget that the taxpayers allowed us to spend down, that we're going to overspend on. The $20,000, though, that we're asking out of, to take out of surplus, I look at that as a mismanagement problem. That is overspending the budget by $20,000 that if we didn't have the Funergy program, was going to be overspent. So the Funergy program took more money in, we put more money out. We're responsible for going back and telling the taxpayers, geez, you know, we made a mistake here. We think that the program is good, but we made a mistake, and we made more, we spent more than we said we were going to Mayor Cooper. But the $20,000 is, my concern is that if we didn't have the Funergy program, we overspent the budget by $20,000. That's, that's a concern.
I understand it is a concern, and we're learning a lot by doing this.